Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
Is Mothman really a supernatural force predicting impending doom? Did Apollo 11 really land on the moon? Did you find out if that was a cult living just 2 doors down that you waved to every single day when you got your mail? If these are things that you ponder when you should be sleeping, then I would like to welcome you to Creepy Confidential. I'm your host, Noelle, your resident weirdo Wisconsinite. I open case files on my favorite cryptids, cults, conspiracies, and other worldly creepy, bringing you new cases, live broadcasts, and local lore. Some stories have been lost with time. Others are perhaps still happening today in your local communities, right under your very creepy noses. So get ready, creeps. It's Creepy Confidential.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, Dylan.
I didn't know what kind of Dylan I was today.
You're D-Y-L-A-N Dylan.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
They never spell your name correctly when you go through drive-thrus, I've noticed.
Dude, and nowadays there's like a bajillion Dylans. You know?
There's a bajillion Dylans.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Oh.
Little Dylans, big Dylans,
Okay.
old Dylans, skinny Dylans,
Medium-sized Dylans.
fat Dylans.
Yeah. Hey, what's up?
Holly's got a little Dylan over there. I heard, I'm a special shout out. It was his first day at preschool, I think.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Way to go, little dude.
Little dudes are cute.
They are.
Dylan, how are you?
I am doing better than expected.
Well, that's fantastic.
It was a Monday.
It was a Monday. All right. Yeah. Well, that happens. Mondays happen.
My Monday's weird because my Monday starts Sunday at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I know, because you spend the entire day, the entire Sunday moping and then telling me, like, tonight's the night I'm going to quit my job.
Dude, it's
And this
stupid.
is like every weekend we go through this. You're such a pouty puss on Sunday because you have to go into work. And then you just tell me over and over again on repeat how you're going to quit.
Yeah.
And I tell you, you're going to manifest. They're going to fire your ass one day.
They're not.
You're manifesting it.
This is a warm body facility if I've ever seen one. And I mean, that people get away with all kinds of stuff because they just keep showing up.
You mean like
eventually.
running over other people?
Yeah, everything.
Like
So
forklifts and stuff, yeah.
I'm not worried about getting fired, but
Okay, well, I guess that's a positive.
So anywho, here we are. Heather, the bigger question is, how are you?
I'm hanging in there, bud. I think I'm on spring break this week.
Oh.
I realized I don't have any assignments due this entire week, and then it hit me like, I think it might be spring break.
Wait.
But I still have one more midterm to take, so I've got to spend this week studying.
Okay.
Yeah, but I had a lot of like big assignments due last week and a couple of tests, midterms, big project due. So last week was a little stressful for me, and I apologize. We didn't have a case ready for you. We did discuss the Ruby Frankie documentary that was on Hulu, but we do have a great case to talk about today. It's just one of those cases where, I don't know, it leaves you with like, wow, you just never really know someone.
Oh.
Like one of those cases.
I like those.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's intriguing.
Yeah, it's a pretty intriguing case, and it's so sad. I feel really sorry for the victim's mother.
Oh.
And I think you'll see in our story, like, it's a really sad story.
Now, since you're maybe on spring break, does that mean we get to go
To Cancun?
party at some place where people have been going for like 30 years, but now the communities don't want them to come there anymore because people are such assholes? One of those places?
Sure. Well, I don't know. I feel like at our age, we probably just want to go party at like a retirement community. Maybe play some shuffleboard.
Yeah, I want to party, but
Sit under an umbrella.
wrap that shit up around 10:30.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I wear comfy clothes to the party? Because I don't really want to be dressed up. You know, I noticed something, and then we'll get into our case, Dylan. We went to the big city on Saturday.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah, I went to the big city and had a meal and did a little shopping. And while we were out, I kept commenting how, well, we kept seeing these groups of young people because where we were eating was kind of like a popular spot where there were a lot of bars around. So a lot of folks were kind of coming down this little alleyway where the restaurant was because there were lots of bars and restaurants down that alleyway. And everyone was so dressed up. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so like cool to see all these young people and they're wearing all these cute outfits and what have you. But I said to you, like, I can't believe there was a time like these young women that I would go out and wear stiletto heels
And walk
all
around.
night long and walk around a city, go dance, party for like 6-7 hours in those heels. And I'm like, no, if I can't wear a comfortable pair of shoes like Vans or, you know, my Docs or something, I'm probably just I'm not going to go.
Well, yeah, putting clothes on that button up and require a belt, you know, that's like a big deal for me.
I know, right? I guess as you get older, your priorities change.
Well, yeah, I want to know when did beer start making me sleepy?
Right?
That's when you know you're on the other side of the hill.
I want to remember back, when did shoes start like hurting my feet?
I used to, you know, 3 or 4 beers in me, you know, I'm wow, you know, I'm, hey, yeah, let's do this. I mean, who knows what the next 6 to 8 hours might bring, right? Now, you know, if, you know, I get 1.5 warm beers down, 2, if I do get froggy and drink 3 or 4, I'm just like,
Yeah.
I get tired.
Well, I would go dance, you know, all night long in my stiletto heels, just getting it, dropping it like it was the hottest thing, like dropping that fucking hot potato all the way to the ground.
Damn.
And now the thought of wearing heels makes my feet hurt.
And you're not going to pop lock and drop it.
I can pop, lock, and drop it, but it's just slower because my knees hurt.
Well,
So
yeah.
I got to be careful.
Yeah,
you know,
like-
the bend and snap's not what it used to be.
No, it's more of a pop, crackle, snap, crackle, pop now.
Yeah.
And like if I have an extended car ride, I have to like stretch when I get out.
Right? I know, man.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
I when I was younger, I would always be like, "Ugh, my parents suck." Like they didn't want to drive places, you know, like, "Oh, that's too far away" or whatever. And I'd be like, "Man, y'all suck." But now I understand because I'm like, driving an hour away to the city, it makes my back hurt.
You know, I wish I tried to do the gym thing when I was younger, and maybe I wouldn't get so sore and beat up from it.
Well, I've been consistently exercising and working out my whole life, whether it was running or gymming. I mean, I've been on and off doing the gym for 20 years, but I still hurt, so I don't think it helps.
Oh, okay. Well, then you see people that have been, you know, going to the gym. They have like joint issues and, you know, a bad shoulder, things like that.
Yeah,
So,
that's why my knees hurt
oh my gosh.
for running.
All right, enough about our old asses.
We want to hear about your old asses. And I mean, I'll look at pictures of your old ass too. You can send those to me at mountmerspodcast@gmail.com. Just saying.
Oh, and I will say that Heather is, she wants to take me out again because she took me out to eat Indian food.
You're banned from Indian. Indian food is my favorite. Like, if we get to pick a restaurant and it's my choice, I'm always going to have Indian food as like my number 1. And sushi is like my number 2.
Okay.
My second choice.
Yeah, and I can deal with it.
I'll take a number 2.
I haven't
but-
eaten a lot of Indian food in my life.
Yeah, well,
but
you definitely take a number 2 after you have Indian food. So I don't know.
I don't think I get to have to order the spicy shrimp again.
From now on, you're banned from Indian food, and I will just take myself on a date for Indian food. And you're not allowed to have Indian food with me.
And then you can just stop and get me like a Happy Meal.
I'm gonna get you like a little order of chicken nuggets, and you can sit at the restaurant with your little nuggies, and I'll have the grown-up food.
Well, let's just say I don't think the Indian food agreed with me.
I don't think anything agrees with you.
Okay.
You're just a boy and you're gross.
All right. So let's move on.
That's my assessment.
Yeah, I felt gross that night.
You're gross all the time. I don't know what you're talking about. Dylan, are you ready to get into this true crime case today? We have a lot to talk about. You want to do it? You want to do it?
No, I think we should just end the show right there.
All right, bye.
No, let's do it. I can't wait. I don't know anything about this case. I'm in the total dark.
Audi 5000.
You haven't, discussed it any at all with me, so let's get into it.
Well, I did, but you just don't remember because
That's
you
not true.
half listen and you don't pay attention.
It's a lie.
Okay. Conway, South Carolina is a coastal town about 12 miles from Myrtle Beach.
Wow.
We'll get Myrtle Beach drunk.
Yeah, I heard it burned down.
Did it?
Well, there was some big fires there.
Gosh, I hope they saved the gay dolphin.
So if anyone is in that area and was affected by the wildfires, we hope you're okay.
Please let us know that the gay dolphin is safe, because I love that store. Fall in the tourist town signals rest for locals. The season's large influx of tourists return home as school gets back in session, and workers get a reprieve from the busy months toiling in the hospitality industry. And I think, you get that in a lot of tourist towns. You kind of have like the hot season where you make all your money and everybody's like super busy and you have all the traffic, and then you get a nice few months of rest from that.
Unless all those people move there.
Yeah. Well, I hear in places like Florida, it's just year-round tourist season, so some people don't get a nice break. Fall also brings a much-anticipated hunting season. Men and women take to the woods to seek out the white-tailed deer. Deer hunting is a time-honored tradition in South Carolina, especially in parts of rural Horry County, where it is a family activity. Deer season in South Carolina is one of the longest in the nation, running from mid-September until January. And then you get into you have bow season, and then you have there's like a muzzleloader season, and then you get into when you can actually use firearms, and so it's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's how people that are into it, they love it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Have you met my dad? That's like all the man talks about, and then watches deer hunting shows on TV.
Yeah,
and spends all year planning out when he's going to go, get corn to put out on the land where he hunts, and
now I gotta say, hunting,
setting up the tree stand, and yeah,
it's one hobby or activity I've never seen somebody semi-passionate about it. It's like, I've never seen somebody kind of, you're all in.
I've grown up with a family of hunters. My uncle is a big bear hunter, and my dad's a deer hunter, and they don't mess around. It's not it's not where you can have 1 foot in, dude. It's all in.
Right.
All or nothing kind of thing. And they spend so much time and money when it comes to hunting.
They're either hunting or talking about hunting.
Oh my gosh. It's so true. And since I was a girl, but they wanted a boy, who you think got to go hunting as a kid?
You just went by default.
Dude, I've been bear hunting. I've been deer hunting. I've been coon hunting.
You've seen things.
Unfortunately. I've traipsed around the woods many a night, Dylan, listening to dogs track something down. Now, I remember the joke in high school was to see who the real rednecks were by who was missing that first day of hunting season. There was always a group of boys, or, some girls too, that they were missing that first day.
They're absent.
Fishing, the first day of fishing opens and the first day of hunting season, they're not going to be there. Now, Sunday, November 17th of 1991 started like any day during deer season for the Allen brothers. 24-year-old Lloyd and his older brother Willis were descended from a long line of deer hunters. The brothers had participated in the sport for as long as they could remember. Lloyd and Willis routinely spent their days off in the woods. Now, the day before, Lloyd and his father had been searching for a deer along several paths and trails in Conway. Lloyd returned to that specific area to check on the tracks he had seen the day before. Driving along Collins-Jolie Road, the brothers spotted something kind of off to the side of the road, and it looked like a blood trail. Now, assuming someone had already killed a deer earlier in the morning, the brothers exited their truck to investigate. Near the saturated area, there were several small pools of blood, and that's when Lloyd commented that it seemed like, quote, a lot of blood.
Right, so it's outside the normal of what they've seen before, right?
right. I mean, you will see a blood trail if someone shoots a deer. You know, there will be, but it's not going to be like
Blood everywhere.
gallons of blood, right? Willis Allen stopped suddenly when he saw a shoe and a slender ankle peeking up from a ditch. Soon, he focused on the mutilated, half-clothed body lying on its side in this ditch.
Damn.
He shouted, "It ain't no deer, Lloyd. It's a dead body."
That's that. I bet that is verbatim what he said,
That is verbatim what he said.
and that's how
a
he
quote.
said it. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to, I did a lot of theater when I was younger.
So, you have these guys, they've been around hunting and things like this, and they enjoy the season. So, they expect when they see this little bit of blood or something, or what they think signs of hunting, they're expecting a certain thing, right? And that must be very shocking.
Well, we hear about these hunters.
Yeah.
It's not just these guys, but more than once, hunters who are out sporting stumble upon a gruesome, scene, find a body.
I'll tell you who finds all the bodies. Hunters, joggers.
Farmers
Farmers sometimes.
out on a tractor somewhere.
Old man walking his dog.
People walking their dogs.
Or a man with his son fishing.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
Or people fishing. Let's
All
say.
right, okay. Yeah,
Women fishing.
I gotcha.
You think that's all the categories?
Well,
They find most of the
I
bodies.
think they find a lot.
And they find a lot of, they think it's a mannequin. So they think they find a lot of mannequins.
Yeah, we should make a list of like the top 10 people who find bodies.
think
I'm
we
going to research this.
Okay.
This reminds me to stay out of the woods. Now, the brothers from a distance examined the scene. Blood seemed to be everywhere, mixed with clumps of leaves and dirt. The hair on the victim was so matted that they couldn't tell what color it was.
Wow.
But Lloyd guessed the victim was female based on the clothing. The victim appeared to be butchered like an animal, her guts, quote, hanging out, he would describe.
God, what a horrible scene.
Dylan, it is ghastly. I mean, this is just, like I said, it's such a tragic case.
Well, just seeing a dead body, period,
Yeah.
would freak you out. Out in the wild, if you will. But seeing it eviscerated like this, or cut up, mutilated, literally can see the guts, I don't know. I mean, that would really mess me up.
Hastily, the young men drove to their sister's house, where they asked her to call 911. This was at 9:10 a.m. The police arrived at the house just before 10 a.m. Lloyd, his father, and his sister accompanied the police to the spot where the body had been found. Willis remained behind, traumatized by what he had witnessed in the woods. He would later say, quote, "I was too scared and had seen more of that body in those woods than I ever hoped to see. Whoever did this was sick." A few hours before, at 3:30 a.m., Mike Hill, a dispatcher with Horry County, received a frantic call from a woman stating, quote, "My daughter went to a party tonight and she ain't come home yet."
And see, these are young guys that see butchered animals, shoot things.
Well, yeah, they're
kill
dressing.
them.
I mean, if you've ever seen an animal dressed, it's not pretty.
So they're not squeamish
Right.
about, a little bit of blood, or, seeing an animal killed, or, butchered, or things like that. So, I mean, that lets you know how bad the scene was.
Well, the woman was hysterical on the phone, and the dispatcher couldn't get her to answer questions. So instead, he just let her talk. The woman said her daughter was with a girl named Carla Allen and that the two had gone to a party. Then at 11:15 p.m., Carla dropped her daughter off at the mall, where her daughter was last seen driving off in her new blue Toyota Celica, which was a graduation present. The car had a license plate that read C. Todd. Finally, the woman tells the dispatcher her name is Bonnie Todd and that her daughter is 17-year-old Crystal Todd, a senior at Conway High School. Now, it just so happens that Mr. Hill remembers Bonnie and Crystal, as he had taught piano lessons to Crystal when she was a young child.
Wow.
It wasn't unusual for parents to report a tardy child as missing. I mean, this kind of happens sometimes. These 911 dispatchers get these kinds of calls. Bonnie Todd explained that she had called Carla Allen and Crystal's other friend, Ken Register. No one had seen her daughter. Then Bonnie had driven around Conway looking for her child. Mike Hill assured her that everyone knew Crystal, that she was a good girl, and she was likely not out getting into trouble. There wasn't much he could do at the time, but he told Bonnie to call back when Crystal arrived home and that he would send a patrolman over to, quote, give her a good scare so that she wouldn't pull another stunt like this again. You got these small town folks, they know each other. So, it's a little different when you live in a small town and everybody knows everybody. I mean, even the 911 dispatcher knows you, knows your daughter, and we're going to send a cop over to,
give her a stern talking to.
Give her a talking to. Now, after making a few more phone calls, Bonnie Todd called 911 again at 8 a.m., making another plea to help find her missing daughter. The morning dispatcher asked an officer named Wade Perry to drive over to Bonnie Todd's home to speak with her. Though Crystal was only overdue by a few hours, a missing persons report could be filed to alleviate her mother's concerns. There was nothing exceptional about Crystal Todd's Saturday night. She had started out earlier in the evening by having dinner in nearby Marion, South Carolina, with her mother's family. Afterward, she set out to find friends and something to do. Now, Conway, a small town, didn't have a lot of activities for young people. I think most of us who grew up in a small town know that to be true. There usually are not a lot of offerings for young folks.
Right.
So it was the kind of place where teenagers set out not really knowing what the night would bring. And this is very familiar. I mean, this was kind of when I was in high school, what happened. Like, I might go out with a group of girlfriends and we didn't really know what we were getting into. You just sort of set out and see where the night takes you.
Well, and I'm sure people do this, and no matter the area you're in, but some places have options of things to go do. You set out to go directly and do whatever, go to this place or do this activity, but when you don't have the availability of that, you just kind of get together, see where the night takes you.
Well, they usually gathered at the only mall in town or a teen hangout called Minnesota Fats. And it's soda, S-O-D-A, Minnesota Fats.
I like
which
it.
I think is cute. Now, the half-mile loop around the mall had been a teen cruising spot for years. And when I said, this was familiar to me, back in my hometown, they don't do it anymore. At some point, they kind of outlawed. I think they outlawed cruising. But we had a certain spot in town where you cruised. And on Friday and Saturday nights, many, many young people would go to this area. It was like a shopping center, and basically cruise a big loop around the parking lot over and over again. Or you would park in the lot and meet up with friends and talk and hang out. Right?
So you're just driving around the parking lot?
The plaza. You remember the plaza?
Yeah, I
Remember
do.
plazas?
And
that's where everybody was cruising.
There's a little loop. You could come out and go up the road to the McDonald's and loop around the McDonald's. And of course, that kind of thing kind of fell out of style anyway. But, they changed the road where, you couldn't kind of drive like that anymore.
Well, kids just don't cruise. But that was a big thing. I mean, even back in my parents' day, my grandparents.
Right.
Cruising was a thing.
Well, it was a social thing,
You
right?
washed your car. You went out. There were certain spots you cruised. That's how my grandparents met. My granddaddy was in some kind of souped up hot rod that he had and was cruising. And my grandma was standing out in front of this restaurant called Charlie's, and then it became Duval's. It was Charlie's restaurant. And that's where that whole generation in the 50s was hanging out. And he pulled up and, said something to her, and she cussed him out. And the next thing, she's agreeing to go on a date with him. And then that was it. But I hear stories like that from my friends telling me that's how my grandparents, Charlie's, it seems like everybody in Haywood County's grandparents met there back in the day. But, my parents, that was a thing that they did. Kind of reminds me of Dazed and Confused. Kids get out and you go cruising and you don't really know where you're going to end up, and then somebody might have a party, you go to a bonfire, you end up in a field passed out somewhere after you drink a couple Zimas.
Now, cruising's been going on a long time, and I think most areas have the place where young people hang out, congregate, and things like that. But yeah, that's really just falling out of style nowadays. And obviously,
it's kind of sad.
Well,
it was so fun, really.
It was fun. Yeah, it was fun.
My friend and I was reminiscing with her, my best friend, the other day about I was like, I'm working on this story and they're talking about cruising. And I'm like, do you remember, we would go cruising. We had this friend Jill, and she had, I think it was an old Buick, and we would ride, she would drive. And
was it a sweet old Buick?
oh yeah. I mean, I can't even remember what it was now, but we would be driving around with her, and there was some dude, and now we were like the class of 98. So, we old. But we would be driving around, and it's like 1998. We're about to graduate. We're seniors. And there was this dude who had this teal Ford F-150 pickup truck that said like class of 92.
Oh.
Like he had a huge sticker, took up the entire back window of his car or truck, class of 92.
Damn, you can't get over
and
it.
He was always cruising, and we would laugh. We called him Wooderson. We'd be like, there's Wooderson. Because this dude's like... graduated 6 years ago, and he's still cruising with the high school kids. And he had a mullet in like 98. And so we would always be like, oh, there he is. Because, I mean, come on.
Well, that was the pinnacle of his life. Some people can't get over high school.
I often wonder what happened to class of 92 guy.
He's probably still driving around.
He's probably still got that teal F-150.
With his rusted out F-150, teal F-150 with class of 92.
Now he's back to being cool again because the mullet's back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, man, your whole vibe's so retro.
Okay, so we got to get back to the story. Enough. I've been off on too many tangents. Now, when Crystal heard about a party, she didn't want to go alone. So she's driving around, she hears about this party, and one of her best friends, Carla Allen, was working part-time at the Belk's department store. So in the parking lot, after Carla's shift, the pair discussed, quote, the pond party. Apparently some girl they knew from high school was having a party, and her house was on a pond, or her parents had this house that's on this pond. So it's at the pond party.
That sounds awesome.
It's like a parking lot party.
You can go fishing, and you can kiss a girl, and
throw a frog on somebody.
Get down there and buy the lily pads.
I would kiss you by the lily pads.
Maybe I'd kiss you on a lily pad.
Oh, that's so romantic.
I don't know. It'd kind of be cold, mucky. Those areas tend to be muddy.
Why don't you just croak in my ear a little bit?
Baby.
Yeah.
Rabbit.
Oh,
Yes.
I like it. Okay. So after Carla made a quick phone call home, her mother granted her permission, but told her, she had to be home by 11:15. She had a curfew. There were about 50 people at this party. Crystal Todd sat on the couch with Carla, chatting and socializing with a few other guests. She was pretty happy to have her car back. She's got this Toyota Celica, new Toyota Celica, which that's a fucking hot car. I don't care who you are.
Oh, I was going to say
that was like the car I wanted as a teenager.
Yeah, it was a nice car back then.
Super cool car. A few months earlier, Crystal had been driving under the influence and wrapped her car around a light pole. She had gotten her license back 4 days before the party, and the charges were reduced to a minor possession of alcohol. So she's pretty stoked that she's got her license back and she's got a new car. There was a boy at the party named Sammy who had been kind of Crystal's on and off again hookup. Carla disliked this guy, Sammy, because he treated Crystal poorly. Sammy used Crystal for sex, but wouldn't acknowledge her in public.
Oh, that's gross.
Crystal seemed to have some hope that they might get into a relationship.
You see, I don't understand people that do this. And it can be the guy or the girl, whoever doing it, the other person. And it's like, why? They always like, well, maybe that I can change them, or maybe this will happen. And it's like, why do you even want to be with someone like this? You know what I mean? It's like you're worth more than that.
Yeah, but when you're young,
I mean, I get it. You see people do it.
You do goofy stuff, Dylan.
You do, but then it's like when you're watching your friend and the other person's just gross, doesn't appreciate them, toxic, just horrible in all these ways. And you never understand what they see in that person. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And it's so kind of hard to watch.
It can be. But you really have to tread lightly because you don't want to piss your friend off.
Well, yeah, that's the thing about it. It's such a kind of complicated situation.
It can be. Absolutely. Well, just before 11 p.m., Crystal told Carla she was ready to go whenever because, Carla's got this 11:15 curfew. So Crystal drove Carla back to the mall to get her car. Crystal explained that her curfew was at 12:30 a.m. and she didn't want to go home yet. Carla worried her friend would return to the pond party, but Crystal said she wasn't planning on doing that. Instead, she was just going to drive around, maybe see somebody like out in town. Carla told her to, quote, be careful, as she had a foreboding feeling wash over her. And it's interesting that sometimes you get these little spidey senses about your friends, your family.
Right.
When Officer Petty arrived at Bonnie Todd's house, she was eager to place a missing persons report. She reported that Crystal was 5'3", weighed about 112 pounds, with brown hair and blue eyes. She was wearing blue jeans, a floral top, brown shoes, a brown belt, and that she was carrying a brown leather jacket. That's what she had had on the night before. Bonnie had already phoned Crystal's friends, several of whom had driven around Conway looking for the girl. Crystal's metallic blue car was found parked at Conway Middle School. When the officer checked on the car, he found the trunk and doors locked. Inside, he could see Crystal's purse. There was no sign of Crystal Todd.
So this situation is only getting worse, right? I mean, really.
Well, yeah. Detective Bill Knowles was considered to be a better than good detective. He had completed a 3-month training program at FBI Training Academy in Quantico and had investigated hundreds of homicides. So when he arrives at Collins Jolie Road, the yellow police tape had already been placed around this crime scene. Officer Wade Perry, who had filed a missing persons report on a teenage girl earlier, was there. And, he's telling this detective, hey, I took this report. But officers there are saying, but we don't know yet if this victim could be this missing girl.
Now, is this a local detective that
Yes.
has had, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
To have an investigator with that type of experience around a small community like this.
Yeah.
I mean, really, honestly.
So it's a narrow dirt road, and police needed to work the scene from the outside, kind of into the path, to preserve evidence properly. Blood drenched the hair and clothing of the victim. It was pulled around the body. There were drag marks on the ground, bloody drag marks. It was hard to tell the victim's age by the grisly condition in which the body was left. The victim's belt and blue jeans were unfastened, pulled down around her hips. Her shirt was pulled up and torn. The bra was sort of tangled above her breasts, exposing them. The buttons on the shirt were missing. And the victim's face was bloodied, and there was a 3 to 4 inch opening across the throat area. She had slash wounds to the chest and stomach. One of the cuts on her stomach was so deep that inner body parts were protruding from her body.
Damn, this has all the classic signs of a sexual assault, and just the brutality is, I just don't understand. I don't understand how you could do this to another human.
A mutilated body presents the worst possible scenario for law enforcement. The grief families experience knowing their loved one died under such horrific circumstances is quite difficult. Law enforcement is responsible for solving the case immediately and finding answers, and the community is on edge until the killer is caught. And in the meantime, the killer is walking free, and it's just a tremendous pressure for law enforcement. Now, the evidence team took 38 photographs with some videos as well to document the scene. They gathered blood samples along with plaster impressions of shoe and tire prints. Blood evidence was scraped from underneath the victim's nails, and a class ring was removed from her finger. It was engraved with the name Crystal Faye Todd.
Well, that's a pretty good indication of who it is right there.
Mike Hill, the 911 dispatcher who had taken the original call from Bonnie, he was there at the scene. Because again, this is like a small town. This is a small town police department. So they've got like everybody out working this crime scene.
Well, yeah, and this is certainly, I'm sure, out of the ordinary. And,
Absolutely.
And word's going to spread very quickly about something like this.
So Mike Hill, this dispatcher, was called over to make a positive identification of the body. He was hoping that they would be able to spare Bonnie Todd having to make an ID on her daughter's mutilated body. I mean, can you imagine?
No.
How horrible that would be. Other items collected from the scene included 2 condom packages, 1 condom, like an open, just condom, not the wrapper, and a piece of orange and black material. Detective Knowles made the death notification to Bonnie Todd. She said to him, quote, "If she ain't alive, then I don't want to live either." For 10 agonizing minutes, Bonnie Todd had like this hysterical breakdown. She was sobbing and screaming uncontrollably. She was just inconsolable. So let's talk a little bit about Crystal. Crystal Faye Todd was born on January 4th of 1974 to Bonnie and Junior Todd. Junior had a son, Donnie, from a previous marriage. He was a lot older than Crystal. Sadly, Junior was seriously ill for much of Crystal's childhood. The little girl would help take care of her ailing father, who passed away in 1985. Crystal's grandma and uncle were both sick as well, and they lived kind of next door. So it seems like Crystal would take them to appointments and kind of help them out, care for them. Bonnie described her daughter as being an accommodating child who was really eager to please. At an early age, Crystal could make her own breakfast of grits, eggs, sausage, and coffee.
Oh, wow.
Crystal was handy around the house, offering to do the shopping and straightening up before her mother came home from work. According to Bonnie, Crystal enjoyed cleaning and liked to keep the house tidy from top to bottom. Crystal did the cooking and washing. She even cut the grass.
Gosh.
She was just like super into making sure everything was put away and looking nice, and wanted to help her mom out. She's got a, single mom.
Where you get a kid like that?
I don't know what Bonnie's secret is, but she sounds like she was a pretty good mom, right?
Well, and it sounds like early on, Crystal,
Had to take on a lot of responsibility.
had to take on a lot of responsibility.
Maybe had to kind of grow up fast.
And maybe she just didn't mind doing some of it. Sounds like she actually enjoyed, helping like that domestically around the house and helping other people.
Bonnie said Crystal disliked smoking and often got onto her mother if she was smoking in the car. As soon as they would get out of the car, Crystal would take the ashtray, dump it, and then wash it before putting it back in the car.
My gosh.
She was so picky about smoking that Crystal refused to date boys who smoked cigarettes.
It's hard to even remember how smoking was when we were kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The fact it was everywhere.
My Nana, she was a damn chain smoker when I was a kid. Like, smoked in the house, smoked in the car, smoked in your face.
I was just thinking, I was a smoker for years. I smoke way less now, but I still smoke here and there. But, I just can't believe how society used to be about cigarettes.
Okay, so we have kind of found our little dive bar spot where we like to go for karaoke once in a while. And it's like a private club, and they allow smoking inside. And you're a smoker, and you're like, it kills me to be in there, and I'm a smoker.
I don't know.
I'm sitting over in the corner with my eyes like red, and I'm snotting and coughing. Yeah.
Well, no, like literally, we can go there. We have a blast there. Good people, but people are just drinking and smoking.
Yep.
Nothing like it's like gambling and smoking and drinking. It all goes together.
It reminds me of my childhood when my grandparents would drag me to the Elks Lodge on Friday night, and it was steak night, and everybody be drinking and smoking and carrying on.
Yeah, it's like I have my jacket I wore in there the other day, and I just happened to pass it in the hallway, and I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I want a lot of cigarette just for the novelty. Hey, we're smoking inside, and I'm just like, I can't even do this,
dude. The minute we leave there and come home, I jump in the shower. Even if I showered like 2 hours before I come home and take a shower, because I can't stand that cigarette smell in my hair.
Yeah, I know.
It's like permeate, and I have to immediately put my clothes in the laundry. I can't stand it. It's too much.
Gosh.
Well, as a teenager, Crystal loved clothes. Girl after my heart here. Detectives noted that when they kind of did a search of her room, that her closet was stuffed full of fashionable new clothes. Like just crammed full of clothes. She had a collection of teddy bears on the bed and the floor of her bedroom. Crystal also liked makeup and perfume. Her mom said she never left the house without, quote, smelling nice. Now, Bonnie Faye worked nights at AVX, which was a microcomputer component manufacturing plant in Myrtle Beach. It was a 45-minute drive away, and Crystal was often left home alone. For years, the family didn't have a telephone, and they would just go next door to Crystal's grandma's house to use the phone. But Crystal wanted a phone line as she got older, And Bonnie liked the thought of being able to call her while she worked nights. And the only phone line like in the house was in Crystal's bedroom.
Oh.
I thought that was kind of funny because, gosh, man, back in the day, it was like so important. Like being on the phone was so important, and having your own phone line was like,
It was the best.
yeah. I had my own phone line.
I never had my own phone.
Well, I didn't have mine just because I was spoiled. It was dysfunctional because like my mom and dad hated each other, and my mom wouldn't let my dad call the house, so he had to get a phone so he could like installed so he could call me.
Right,
And then my mom would ground me from the phone so that I couldn't talk to him.
what?
It was like this fucked up game they would like.
And so they're just arguing with each other through you, basically.
Yeah, it's what's wrong with me now.
No, no, but that was a big deal to have your own phone like that, your own phone number and line that was just for you.
Hell yeah.
I could only imagine.
Yeah.
It must be nice.
I had a Swatch phone, and then I had a phone that looked like a cow, and the numbers looked like they were the color like udders.
Nice.
Yeah, I had a cow phone. It was super cool. So news of Crystal's murder spread through the small town, and soon family and friends filled the Todd home. It seemed the entire community was stunned by the murder, and everyone wanted to know who would want to hurt Crystal Todd. She was a sweet girl who wanted to be friends with everybody. Like, even her mom said she tried to be friends with all these different people and, like, make sure she sort of spread her time around with friends because she didn't want anybody to be jealous or upset. Like, she was such a people pleaser. By Monday, November 18th, news of Crystal's murder appeared in newspapers statewide. Investigators interviewed Carla Allen, who was one of the last people to see Crystal alive. Police wanted to locate anyone who might have seen Crystal or that blue Celica between 11:15 and 11:30 on Saturday night. So far, investigators had nothing to indicate that Crystal had known her killer. Bonnie made an emotional plea in the Sun News. She said, quote, "She was my whole life. I don't know that I'll make it without her. I really don't want to."
See, the scene is a kind of in ways a good. It's a positive and negative for investigators. On the positive side, it's kind of in the middle, on the side of the road. So a lot of the items you find around the body and stuff could be, very important.
It's a really rural, like I saw a photo of this road. It's a really rural dirt road,
Right.
Like a one-way road that kind of cuts through, like it looks like rural farm property.
So it's kind of one of these little countryside roads.
Yeah, absolutely. That, someone would probably definitely need to have a knowledge of the area to even find this road, know where this road is. It seems like probably on either side of the road is private property.
Yeah, I can picture this road in my head. You probably got a significant ditch, that keeps getting bigger, kind of
like
washing out.
There's like a big patch of grass growing right down the middle of the road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So at the scene, items there likely might be connected to it, but it's also kind of an autonomous area. You know what I mean? It doesn't nail down. It's hard to tell what happened. It's certainly going to, if you have, it's certainly going to affect you figuring out who did it, because the connection to the victim, where were they before, what happened, all those questions. So I lost my train of thought, but it is, move on.
Okay.
Cut that out.
No, we're leaving that in, Dylan.
No.
I'm not editing. Crystal's body was sent to the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston for autopsy. The autopsy report showed that Crystal had suffered 30 stab wounds. She had 7 bruises and 3 abrasions on her body. Her throat had been slashed from ear to ear. It was so deep the girl was nearly decapitated. Her spinal column and bones were the only thing really like keeping her head attached to the body. The killer had used such force that there were deep cuts into the spinal cord.
Damn.
Like at her throat. Her abdomen was stabbed in a linear pattern down from her chest. She had been disemboweled. 3 of the stab wounds were deep within the skull, and 1 had punctured her brain.
So the stabs are more like a slash than just a puncture, it sounds like.
I mean, it just sounds like this frenzied attack of both sort of stabs and slashes. I mean,
it's just terrible.
It's like a blitz attack.
Yeah.
I mean, so deep in the skull that it punctured the brain. That takes a lot of force.
A lot of force.
She had bruising in the vaginal and rectal areas indicating rape. Semen was found in both areas as well as in her mouth. Crystal had lived for several minutes after the attack, according to the pathologist. She bled to death, leading to the official cause of death as exsanguination. The toxicology report showed only caffeine in her system. Despite the frenzied number of stab wounds, pathologists called it, quote, a very controlled and deliberate attack.
Wow. I'm kind of surprised by that.
Bonnie Todd was not convinced that a stranger had hurt her daughter. She knew Crystal well. Crystal would never get into a vehicle with someone she didn't know. On several occasions, Bonnie had expressed that if anyone ever grabbed Crystal, it didn't matter how fast they might be driving down the highway, she should jump out of the car, that a few broken bones were better than what they might do to her. Which I've had, relatives say that to me. Like, if somebody grabs you, jump out of the car, like, do whatever you have to do to get away from it.
That'd be so scary to jump out of a car. No, but that situation would be terrible. But could you imagine how, yeah. But yeah, I mean, they're right. If you can jump out and get away, that's going to be better than whatever's going to happen.
Yeah, well, my attitude is if somebody's willing to grab me, like, I'm fighting back, and if they've got a gun, then they're going to shoot me there instead of taking me off somewhere and doing some fucking horrible shit to me.
I've said it before.
Like, you're going to have to fuck me up before you get me in that car. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I showed you a video just the other day. That guy walks in the store, pointing a gun in people's face, this little guy, and this big old man. I mean, he's a big guy.
Old man strength.
Old man, he just takes his glasses off and sets them on the counter, and he just goes straight to that. And the guy's caught totally off guard. The old man just slings him around like a rag doll, takes the damn gun from him, and he very well could have got shot. But I'm kind of in the same vein of thought. If you're going to shoot me, it's going to happen anyway. I'm not going to let you get control of me.
No, you're going to have to take me out.
Yeah.
Because it's going to take a lot. Because I'm going to fight you.
Especially if you got a 9.
Because I'm going to fight for my life.
I got a good chance of that bullet passing through cleanly with a 9. Unless it's hollow points.
Investigators took to interviewing like everyone who knew Crystal, not only her friend Carla. Over 100 people were questioned, along with 50 of Crystal's classmates at Conway High School. Investigators asked to see people's knives. Everyone was cooperative, but they still had no leads. David Caldwell, a behavioral analyst with SLED, which is the South Carolina law enforcement investigation division or whatever, he was brought in to create a profile of the killer. Law enforcement was working 16-hour shifts in hopes of finding any lead that they could. David Caldwell with SLED produced a profile of Crystal's killer. Now, I'm going to give you just some of the points. Not all of them, but pretty interesting what he came up with. He said it was a white male between 20 and 25. Recklessness is probably a noticed trait or characteristic. He has some social skills, can smile, and doesn't seem too scary. He's an angry man with a generalized anger toward most people, probably episodically employed. He is not a professional or businessman. He has issues with policies and procedures at work and exhibits a cyclical behavior in the workplace, like he performs well one week but maybe not the next. He's probably a local person to Horry County and is familiar with the area. He is impulsive and has a large chip on his shoulder. He feels fairly confident that he will not be a suspect, that on the evening of the murder, he left a shift at work or some kind of party, maybe earlier in the evening.
Yeah, I'm sometimes very intrigued by these profiles because when it all washes out in the end, it's kind of spot on. But I gotta say, in this case, I think he's basically describing somebody with antisocial skills, personality. I mean, just kind of your general shitbird. I mean, really, you know what I'm saying? Inconsistent employment, changes jobs all the time, problems with authority, things like that.
Well, maybe because those people are the consistent ones who commit crimes or
well,
something?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Now, over 1,000 people attended Crystal's funeral. Several of her male friends were pallbearers. This funeral was huge. They had to direct traffic. They had to help people find parking.
Well,
It was
and yeah,
like the whole high school attended the funeral.
and that doesn't surprise me in a community like this with a heinous murder of this nature.
Rumors circulated that Crystal had been killed by a satanic cult, though there was no real evidence to support this theory. Early 90s, we have the satanic panic.
Well, I think just the viciousness of the attack, if the details have leaked out, which they inevitably do, especially in smaller community like this, I think, because everybody does know everybody, and so tells their wife, and then they tell somebody at the church. The word spreads on the grisly details of this nature.
Many of Crystal's classmates had trouble expressing their pain and grief. The death was so sudden and unexpected that many of the young attendees at this funeral could not reconcile that Crystal in her casket would be the last time they would ever see her again. And death is particularly hard for young people.
Well, it's a sudden death of a young,
Yeah.
vibrant person.
And especially when it's something as vicious as homicide.
Yeah.
Ken Register, one of Crystal's closest friends, was asked to be a pallbearer. He initially declined. Now, his mother Shirley noted that he was sick before, during, and after the funeral. It was after the funeral that Ken called and visited Bonnie more than ever before. He seemed particularly interested in the investigation and wanted to support Bonnie, kind of always dropping by the house, hanging out, checking on her.
You think that's a red flag?
Well, I mean, it could be Dylan, but then again, all these young folks are really having a hard time with her death. So I'll let you see what happens.
Okay. Well, maybe there's feeling connected to Crystal through her mother now, or just trying to do what they can to help.
Crystal's car keys were still missing. Friends thought it was odd that she had parked her Celica at the middle school. It was like a bit of a dimly lit parking lot and not a place where they typically would park or hang out. Nearly everyone from Crystal's class parked at the Coastal Mall, like if they were going to ride with someone else. That was the meeting spot. That's where you left your car. It was well lit.
Yeah, and the middle school's not cool, dude.
No.
Middle school parking lot is, I mean, they know where hey, pull over here and we'll, get together and go to so-and-so. They know they know the habits of the young
Right.
people.
So they thought that was kind of an odd place for her car to be found. That was like, it's just kind of out of character for her to park there. Like, that's not something that she normally would do. So a lot of people didn't understand, like, why would she be parked like over at the middle school in this dark parking lot?
Well, sounds like the kind of parking lot where you'd park if you didn't want to be seen.
There was a spare key in a metal box underneath Crystal's car, and it was still intact, but they had no idea where her keychain was with the keys. Because Carla Allen had been the last known person to see Crystal alive, she started getting these weird kind of threats from people. Like, she would get these phone calls and kind of threatening notes. And a lot of her friends started telling her that she needed to be careful because she could be the next victim.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, this poor girl was scared out of her mind.
But that's Crystal's friend. It's not even abnormal for her to be the last person to have seen her. And I guess they're kind of hinting at the fact maybe they don't believe what she's saying or something like that. Well, I've never understood people in any situation that start threatening or harassing people.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
No, it's very weird. I mean, she's scared at this point, and she's also distraught. She's lost her friend. She is probably the last person who's seen her alive. She said she had a bad feeling that night. She didn't want Crystal to go anywhere. She wanted her to just go home. And then this happens, and then she's being harassed. I mean, gosh, leave the poor girl alone. Leave Brittany alone. Parents started calling 911 when their kids were late for curfew. Many were convinced that a killer was prowling Horry County looking for teenagers, that they had a serial killer on the loose.
And that's what happens when you have a horrible murder like this and the assailants aren't captured immediately, right?
And again, Bonnie Todd, she is distraught. Every day, she kept in contact with law enforcement to follow up on her daughter's case. Police felt terrible when they had little to report back. They had multiple agencies working overtime to find Crystal's killer, but they still had no breaks in the case. They had the local police department, they had the sheriff's department, and then they have the state police. And again, they're working like 16-hour shifts, like working double time for months.
It seems to be, now all murder's bad. And it, everyone it affects is a horrible thing to deal with.
That should be a t-shirt. All murder is bad.
Right.
Dylan. Yes.
Yes, Mountain Murders merch shop. Check it out.
Little quote, yeah.
Go to mountainmurders.com. You can get all Mountain Murders things there.
Actually, mountainmurderspodcast.com, Dylan.
That one.
It'd be nice if you knew your own website. Anyway, what were you saying?
No, but I'm saying it seems like when a parent loses a child to murder like this, it's kind of unique in its grief and its devastation, because I've heard investigators comment that obviously the hardest part of the job is letting people know that something's happened to their loved one, but they will talk about the wails and sobs of parents sounding like something that can't come out of a human. You know what I mean? It kind of haunts them, if you will, and it's just such a horrible thing. I can't even fathom getting news like this. That all of a sudden,
that kind of pain,
you go from normal, regular, everyday, your child's younger. You think you got years and years to see them. You're more worried about what happens to you, as you get older or something like that. But just that suddenness of something just terrible and you just never get to see them again.
Well, poor Bonnie, I mean, her heart is broken.
And not only that, to know they were brutalized.
Yeah.
And scared and all this in their last moments. I mean, I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us don't know and don't want to know that kind of pain.
That's like sometimes people are like, oh, that's been, years ago. You just kind of got to let that go. I would never ever think like that or tell a parent something like that.
No, not at all. Law enforcement learned that Crystal had felt someone might be following her and wanted to hurt her leading up to her death. So for about 3 weeks before she was murdered. I couldn't find a lot more information about this, but it seems like maybe friends had mentioned this to police. Investigators interviewed Bonnie's boyfriend, Eugene. Now, Bonnie had been seeing this guy for about a year. He had attended a dinner in Marion, South Carolina with Bonnie's family, including Crystal, on Saturday night. Crystal had driven separately to that dinner and had left around 7 p.m. Now, he's not a suspect, I should say. But police just want to talk to him and kind of get maybe a better view of this relationship between mother and daughter. He and Bonnie had returned to the Todd house around midnight. And at 1:30 in the morning, Bonnie called him to say Crystal was missing. Eugene returned to the home, and that's when he picked up Bonnie. They drove to the mall and then sort of the surrounding area looking for Crystal's car. At 8 a.m., it was about 3, I think, in the morning when he finally dropped Bonnie off. No success in finding Crystal's car. And it was about 8 a.m. that he called Bonnie again to learn that Crystal was still not home. Now, Eugene said there were no problems between the mother and daughter. He said one night Crystal had come home after drinking and that Bonnie had given her a stern talking to, and Crystal promised she wouldn't do it again. Then a second time that she used alcohol, that's when she had that car accident where she wrapped her car around a light pole.
Well, yeah, and that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. So I guess, at that point, Bonnie, she's pretty furious with her daughter. I think most parents would be pretty fucking upset if your kid does something like that, and scared, Eugene said since then he didn't believe Crystal had drank again and that she was not a drug user to his knowledge. Eugene said he thought of Crystal like a daughter and often gave her money. Like if he was taking Bonnie on a date, Eugene would make sure Crystal had some extra money so she could get something to eat. He didn't know the girl to have any enemies, but he said overall she and Bonnie got along well and dearly loved one another. If Crystal was planning on being late, especially after the drinking incident, that she knew to call her mother and let her know that she was going to be late or whatever the reason was for her tardiness. Eugene also told investigators that Crystal was not one to complain and that if she was having trouble with someone or had an enemy, Crystal wasn't the kind of person who would express it. And he gave the example that one time Crystal was wearing some shoes that hurt her feet, and she didn't even want to tell her mom because she didn't want to burden her mom.
Huh.
Whatever they were out doing, she wanted her mom to be able to have fun, and she didn't even mention that these shoes were killing her feet.
So she's considerate of other people's feelings even above herself.
Yeah. And it sounds like she kind of keeps, like, her problems, you know, kind of close at hand. Like, you know, she doesn't go around sharing her issues with other people because she doesn't want to bother them or whatever. I mean, she just sounds like such a sweet girl.
She does.
Super thoughtful. Bonnie Faye was never considered a suspect, but there were certain subjects police had not broached with her. Speaking with Eugene and a few of Crystal's friends, they got the overall idea that mother and daughter got along, but there had been some moments of trouble, like relating to the drinking, missing curfew a few times, you know, that kind of thing. Investigators wanted to be sensitive, obviously, but, you know, when they searched Crystal's room, the detectives had found a few things that they were kind of like, for example, there were drawers full of what they called, you know, sexy lingerie that they thought was odd for a 17-year-old girl to have. Many of the items were from Victoria's Secret. They were kind of lacy and satin.
Well, and that stuff's kind of pricey as well.
Well, expensive and not the most practical underwear items and not something you'd really expect to find in a teenage girl's, like a high school girl's bedroom, right? Some people who knew Crystal mentioned drugs and wild sex, that she was promiscuous. Although there was no real proof of this or, you know, that this was anyhow involved in the case, investigators also considered that Bonnie perhaps might be withholding important information just to save her daughter's reputation.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and people do that after the fact.
Detective Knowles understood how rumors get started, but also felt that he kind of needed to track down any bit of information regarding Crystal's murder. So he really has to figure out a way to broach some of these sensitive subjects with Bonnie.
And also considering Bonnie works 45 minutes away.
At night.
At night. You got, you know, I know Crystal has, you know, relatives right next door, which is a good thing. But also, she's not going to know everything her daughter's into.
Well, there's that. Now, the time had come for Knowles to approach Bonnie with some pointed questions. He needed to know if Crystal was involved in anything that maybe her mother didn't approve of or like want her to be involved in. When, you know, he starts to talk to her about these things, Bonnie seemed deflated at the suggestion that her daughter might have been anything other than sweet and wonderful, which is understandable. Most parents don't want to think about their children using alcohol, engaging in sex, having used or using drugs. But investigators needed to examine every angle. So after the interview, Detective Knowles realized that he was not going to get much information out of this grieving mother. Like, she's not going to be willing to talk about any of these things. Her response was basically, Crystal wasn't doing anything that all the other kids in town, like, weren't doing.
Which might be true.
Well, yeah.
Right.
On January 6th of 1992, investigators wanted to speak with Ken Register. No one was home, so the officers left a card in the door jamb at his parents' house. You know, they'd kind of initially just spoken to him, but they hadn't really had an interview, and they were trying to make sure they're covering all the bases, having, you know, kind of in-depth interviews with all of Crystal's friends. So 2 days later, Shirley Register, that's Ken's mother, calls the detectives. They'd briefly spoken with Ken before, and he'd had a solid alibi, but because he was a close family friend and had been this pallbearer at Crystal's funeral, detectives explained that they were hoping that he might be able to shed some light on, you know, maybe some details of Crystal's life or people she knew or something like that. Maybe something that, you know, they didn't know. Ken finally agreed to speak with officers and then went to Bonnie's home that same day to express concern about the interview. Bonnie Todd reassured him that it was just a protocol and he had no cause for concern. Ken told her he was worried about, quote, giving blood, and that police were desperate so they might pin the murder on somebody just to say it was solved.
I mean, that's kind of a genuine concern, I guess, but at the same time, that would kind of make my antenna go up.
Well, Bonnie told him it wasn't true. She had never seen him so upset. She didn't really understand, like, you know, why are you overreacting? Bonnie told him, Ken, you're acting like they're picking on you. He said, well, don't be surprised when they arrest the wrong one. Bonnie told him, quote, nobody's going to be arresting you, Ken. So on Monday morning, Bill Knowles was set to have an interview with Ken Register at around 3:30 p.m. When Bill comes in that morning, another officer shares that Bonnie Todd had called over the weekend and was now suspicious of Ken.
Oh.
Ken surprised investigators by showing up to the interview several hours earlier than scheduled. Ken appeared normal in the interrogation room. Many of the teenagers they'd spoken with had seemed nervous or scared. Ken told detectives that he had known Crystal his whole life. They had dated for about a month back in 1988, but never had sex. He was best friends with Crystal's cousin Kevin, that he viewed the Todds like family. Ken's alibi was that he'd been at a go-kart track until 11:30 p.m. on Saturday night. He arrived home a little after midnight and spoke to his mother, who was in the kitchen, that Bonnie Todd had called him around 1 a.m. to say Crystal was missing. This interview lasted about 45 minutes. Detectives had no reason to suspect Ken Register. However, they did note he seemed to hesitate for the first time when they asked for a blood draw.
Ah.
Now, they explained it was a DNA comparison, that several others had agreed to give up their blood for a DNA test. Ken asked if he could speak to his mother first. But since he was 18 years old, detectives said, he was able to consent on his own, but that if he wanted to confer with his mother or father or an attorney before submitting to the test, that was fine. They said, quote, it's a voluntary thing. It's up to you. Ken seemed very nervous and started asking a lot of questions about DNA, which was still kind of in its infancy, was not as common knowledge, as it is today.
And that's not completely abnormal back then, I would say, because people don't quite understand what DNA is. What do you mean?
Well, he doesn't. Ken didn't understand DNA, so they had to kind of explain to him that it's like a fingerprint, that no two people have the same DNA. It's like these specific markers that are just you kind of,
Oh, but he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, at Conway Hospital, he finally agrees to this blood draw. So they take him to the Conway Hospital, where 3 vials of blood were drawn under law enforcement's watchful eye. A physician also took hair from his head and pubic area, along with salival samples from Ken.
Damn. But that's a pretty comprehensive gathering of DNA evidence. Right.
But they had done this to Ken along with 47 other people.
Well, no, but I'm saying, nowadays they do, I guess that shows the technology's advanced quite a bit, but they just, do a quick cheap swab and they're done.
So like I said, Ken's samples along with 47 others were sealed and sent off to the SLED headquarters in Columbia, South Carolina. Ken left the hospital and drove directly to Kevin's workplace. Now, if you remember, Kevin I think his name's Kevin James, but he's Crystal's cousin. They're best friends. Ken immediately starts telling his friend how awful the police were and that Bonnie Todd told them that he had planned to rig the blood test. So now Bonnie's turned on him, according to Ken. All she said was she was suspicious of him, but now he's like, she's saying I'm going to rig that blood test. What? How do you rig a blood test?
I don't know. But do you just tape somebody else's pubic hairs on you?
Yes. Oh, I shaved it all off.
Oh, yeah. I've shaved my entire body. I'm planning on becoming a professional swimmer.
Yes. He told Kevin, quote, all I could think about was I wanted my mama.
What? Even late teen person acts like that? Seriously.
Well, yeah, if you're being brought in, just ask some questions about your friend's murder and you have nothing to hide, you gonna want your mama?
Well, we've kind of regressed
back. Okay.
We've regressed back into that nowadays. You hear all these stories of these kids bringing their parents to interviews.
Yeah, I told you I had a
HR meetings.
I had an intern who did not get a good grade because she never showed up to her internship and did absolutely nothing. And she brought her grandma to the meeting with me, my boss, and her professor from the college. Her grandma.
Was grandma hot? Oh, like she mad?
Yeah.
Was
you know
she?
what grandma told me?
What?
Well, it was your fault for hiring her.
Oh.
You hired her.
Damn.
Like, so it's my fault that I hired her granddaughter who's a piece of shit.
We didn't hire anybody. It was an internship, Granny. Get with the program.
Well, not only that, but so you're admitting that she's a piece of shit,
Yeah.
but somehow it's my fault that I hired her because she's a piece of shit and I hired her, so it's my fault?
That doesn't add up.
Yeah. Oh, it was extra special, let me tell you. After that, I was like, we ain't never doing interns again because she was probably about my fourth intern.
And did you have a good intern?
Yeah, I had one intern that was fucking amazing. Like, she was awesome. And another dude who was like our intern that like worked for us part-time, you know, like because
Right.
he did well. So yeah, we'd had interns over the years that were really good students and did what they needed to do. And it wasn't like we were asking a lot,
Right.
you know, but when you call in the like 2 times a week for like 2 hours that you're supposed to come in, and then you call in every time because you're sick or you have a job interview and there's always some excuse, and then you've actually shown up like maybe 3 times the entire semester.
2 hours
Dude.
at a time?
Yeah.
God.
The bar was low. It was so low. It was so low she had to bring her grandma to jump over it.
Well, I feel like Ken would have came with his mama.
Maybe. Mama. Now, 2 days after giving the blood to investigators, Ken visited Bonnie at home. He paced agitatedly around the house and refused to sit down. He told her, "They treated me terrible." Ken expressed how he was certain they were going to, quote, rig his blood.
Yeah.
Afterwards, he never called or went back to visit Bonnie Todd again after he'd been spending all this time with her.
Right.
Yeah. On February 15th, agents from SLED called to say they had a match.
Now, I wonder who's matched.
Johnny Kenneth Register II.
God.
Detectives formulated a plan to arrest Ken Register. The morning of February 18th, officers showed up at his workplace early in the morning. Before they arrested him, Ken was asked to sign the statement he'd given back on January 13th of 1992 during that first interview. After he signed the document, they placed Ken under arrest and charged him with kidnapping, rape, and first-degree murder in the death of Crystal Todd. He twice asked to see his mama.
Can I bring my mama down there to the prisons?
Can I see my mama?
God, what a little bitch.
I mean, kind of.
I mean, for real.
Like, grow up, dude. He was questioned for about 3 hours. During the interrogation, Ken was told, now, you know, police can lie to you, Dylan. They're allowed to lie to you.
You know, I don't actually, of course, I want murderers and all that caught. Almost, I don't care how they do it, if it's truly a guilty person. But I kind of don't agree with that element of an investigation.
Well, if you're dumb enough to fall for it, then that's on you. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, but I mean, they can get pretty, they can just lie.
Well, they
straight out
can,
lie.
but if I didn't do it, then you can lie all day, but you ain't going to get me to admit something I didn't do.
Well, no, that's true. But
So good luck with that.
At the same time, I don't know. I think that's honestly what's railroaded some people is the cops being dishonest like this. And you know, not everybody is such a, so smart as you.
Well, that's why you just don't talk to cops.
That's
don't
why
you know?
lawyers say don't say anything.
That's why you don't say anything. I mean, if that's the one thing that you need to learn is you don't have to talk to cops. You can ask for a lawyer. You don't have to say anything.
Well, it's right there.
Shut your mouth.
It's right there in the if they Mirandize you.
Because they can lie to you all they want to.
Well, that's like,
but if you ain't responding to it, then what does it matter?
See, if I ever got caught up in an investigation, they may look at me twice because I would absolutely refuse to take a lie detector.
Well, I'm not going to do that.
That's just on principle, and it has nothing to do with me being guilty or not guilty. I'm just not going to take part in your junk science.
Don't talk to cops. Ask for a lawyer. Always.
Just open up with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want my lawyer.
Exactly. exactly.
I'm not even going to say I plead the fifth because
No, and then they
makes
can
you
lie
sound
to you all
guilty.
day, but you know what? It don't matter because I asked for a lawyer. I ain't talking to you.
I just lie back.
I do. Yeah, me too.
I'm like, yeah, I did it. Maybe this line.
That's when I turn into Jody Arias. I start singing "Amazing Grace."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what she did in the room by herself, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna try that.
No, just don't fucking talk.
I'm
to
just
him.
gonna say a bunch of weird shit because I know they're like video and audio recording
That's
me.
when I get up and start like breaking it. I pop and
Yeah,
lock
you
it
start
and
ray
drop it.
gunning on their ass.
Yeah.
Talking about he started doing the kangaroo.
Start acting like a cat.
we knew
like
he
giving
was-
myself a bath and like licking my hand and petting my face with it.
We knew she was guilty
Start licking parts of my body.
when
like,
she started
meow,
cleaning
meow.
herself.
Yeah. During this interrogation, Ken was told police had a witness who had seen him with Crystal, because again, they're lying, and that his tire and shoe prints matched the crime scene. This was a lie, as I mentioned. Police are allowed to lie to suspects during interviews, well, whether it's right or wrong. And then he's confronted with the DNA evidence. Ken said he would only tell them what happened after he was able to talk to his mama. How'd you know?
I knew it.
I need to talk to you, mama.
You know why they even having to lie to Ken when they got the DNA, dude? The rest of it's moot.
Well, is it though? Because you might have DNA, but that's not going to, that isn't necessarily going to seal the deal.
DNA recovered from all over her body, her murdered body. I mean, damn. What else do you need? But of course,
Listen, I know what you're saying.
But back then, in its infancy, DNA was not the damn hammer it is nowadays.
Well, there's that. And on top of it, Dylan, I listened to a case. Actually, I listened to it last night while I was, straightening up the kitchen, where a guy's DNA was found on some cigarette butts near the body. He claims that he found those cigarettes and had just sort of like picked them up off the ground and smoked them.
Oh, yeah, that's normal.
We've seen people do that. Remember we had that weird neighbor who was like prowling through your cigarette butts that time?
Yeah.
And it's like smoking. We were like, what is he doing? He like stole all your cigarette butts.
Oh, damn, bro. Just ask me.
He's
I'll
like
give you my
building a
trash.
Dylan cigarette butt doll or something
Nice.
to like worship.
No, he's one of those cats that'll take the little butts and got that little bit of backer left in there and like roll it up.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
Well, this guy was like, said he didn't have money for cigarettes and that he had just found these butts at the park and smoked them. And they happened to be, shared DNA with this murder victim who was found nearby. And that's really kind of the only evidence they had against him. And he's in prison and he's still saying that, what the hell? Like, I didn't kill her. I just smoked some cigarettes that were at the park.
God, that would suck if that was really true.
Well, I'm just saying, and so there was kind of a big controversy around, is this little bit of DNA evidence enough to say, yes, conclusively he murdered this person?
Right.
And
Well,
so,
and I get it. I mean, confession's always great, and they always go for it,
They want to
period.
find a murder weapon. They need a motive. I mean, there's so much more.
They
I
want to
think,
know what happened.
to build a case.
And if you don't lawyer up, they're going to keep on until they get what they want.
Ken's mother wrote a note. Now, he wants to talk to his mama, okay?
She sent a note in.
Okay.
Like he's
What
sitting out a gym.
What happened was the police go to his parents' house and tell them, Ken wants to talk to his mama. So she writes a note, and it reads, quote, Ken, I love you. I know where you were at. We know when you left the racetrack, and I know when you got home. I'll stand by you. I love you, Mama.
Oh, so basically mom's putting an alibi on a note.
However, when police come back, they tell Ken they didn't give him the note from his mama.
Damn
And
it.
instead they tell him, your mama's mad and she's upset and she wants you to tell us what happened that night.
Damn. These cops are not playing.
And Ken's... He don't want his mama to be mad at him.
If he had only gotten that,
He don't want to upset his mama.
if he had only got the insurance, his mama's assurance through that note, right?
Yeah. My mama ain't standing by me no more.
If something happens to me at work, I'm like, can I talk to my mama before we discuss this any further?
Yeah, you should.
I want to call my mama.
I'm going to be very upset if they call me. I'm not your mother. You gotta quit
Maybe.
acting like I'm your parent.
Well, I would want to bring you into some kind of a, bad situation. I would want your opinion.
You want me to write like a strongly worded email to your boss?
Yeah. No, you go above their head.
I know, right? Around 3 p.m., Ken Register confessed to the murder. This is his story, Dylan. Are you ready? Now that his mama has rejected him, this is his truth.
I can only imagine what this dumbass is going to say.
After leaving the go-kart track, he passed Crystal at the 9th Avenue stoplight, kind of the corner of 9th Avenue and Elm Street in Conway. They agreed to meet at the middle school. That's when Crystal got into the car with him. According to Ken, he and Crystal had gone to a remote area where they had engaged in consensual sex, but without protection. So I'm curious why they found condom wrappers and such, because it seems that he had condoms, right? That part I'm not sure about, but then again, maybe Ken's a big old liar. Now here's Ken's story, Dylan. When he ejaculated, Crystal became furious. She threatened to accuse him of rape if the encounter resulted in pregnancy. That she was angry and screaming. That's when Ken took a knife from his car that he carried and stabbed her with it. Once he realized what he had done, Ken panicked and dragged Crystal from the car to the ditch. He threw the knife away and drove home. Ken claimed he didn't get bloody during the attack and met his mother in the kitchen when he returned home.
It's very hard to believe somebody wouldn't get bloodied from that horrible attack.
Right after he comes home, that's when Bonnie Todd calls. Now, Shirley Register, when she hears that her son has been arrested, even after she wrote this sweet note to him, Dylan, she's just in disbelief. She thinks police have contrived evidence to make her son appear guilty, and somehow they have wrongfully used his DNA. She doesn't believe any of the charges against her son. She is convinced it is a conspiracy to bring her baby down.
It is an attack on the House of Register. And
she's like, register this.
She knew they were going to rig his DNA.
They rig it, Dylan. 2 days later, police showed up at her home with a search warrant. Kenny Sr., Ken's dad, threatens law enforcement and doesn't allow them inside the house. Like, he's like, the next place you'll be is the morgue.
Don't let him in. They're going to rig your DNA next.
Well, after they tell him, like, we'll throw your ass in jail.
It's a search warrant,
It's a search warrant, bud. He finally apologized for the outburst and let them in to do their jobs. People in Conway were also stunned when they got this news. Ken had been known as a varsity football player at Conway High School. He was an average student, but never got into trouble. He was known as hardworking. There were no indications of violence in his background. However, law enforcement found that he had previously had a run-in with some cops. 2 months before Crystal's murder, Ken was on his way to class at Carolina Coastal University. He was driving his mother's car. He pulled into a parking lot and kind of pulled over next to these two female students and asked for directions to the library. Ken then flashed his penis at the girls and said, "Come and get it."
God. Jesus.
He's like, "Come get this wiener."
So this is deviant behavior, right?
Yeah. He's like waving his little dick in the wind. Like, hey, come and get it. Like, nobody wants it, bud.
Don't you see it?
Abracadabra, I'm going to reach in and grab it.
But if you look real close, you can see my penis.
What the fuck?
But let me get this belly out the way.
Yeah.
You want to see this?
No, I just want to see your belly.
You want to see my penis?
I've done synced it.
Now, don't you be rigging my DNA. God, Jesus. What a dumbass. This doesn't surprise me that this guy acts like this towards women. He sounds like a fucking douche.
Yeah. I got something else to tell you here in a minute. So one of the women happened to get the license plate number and handed this to campus police along with the description of Ken. He was soon arrested and released on bond. They tracked this vehicle down to his mama.
That's how tags work.
Who admitted that her son had been driving the car that day. So this charge, they, wanted to be able to use this at the murder trial to show his character. He was tried on September 21st of 1992 on the indecent exposure charge, and it only took the jury 2 hours to return a guilty verdict. The murder trial was then set for January of 1993. Ken Register carried an old-timer knife, which was the same size as the blade used to inflict Crystal's injuries. They learned that he had thoroughly cleaned his car after the murder, but traces of blood were located on the steering wheel, the stick shift, and the door handles. So obviously this is used against him, evidence.
So I could get the blood out of a car. I clean cars really good.
The alibi Ken had given was also inconsistent. The DNA was rock solid. So it only took the jury 75 minutes to return a guilty verdict on this kidnapping, rape, and murder charge. He would be in prison for life. I should also mention, Dylan, I said I had something else for you. So not only was little Ken over here trying to wave his dick in the wind, he had a 14-year-old girlfriend, and he's 18. He had been at the go-kart track with a 14-year-old that was his girlfriend.
What the hell?
So he was dating a 14-year-old girl when he was an adult.
Disgusting.
So this guy has some issues, right?
He's a piece of shit. That's his main issue.
Well, in 1995, Ken appealed to the state Supreme Court, but they upheld his sentence. So Ken is, he's rotting away in jail.
Good. Which is too good for him. But some people say, an extended, prison for life, a lot of families feel like a lot of times that's a better punishment than death.
Poor Bonnie Todd, she passed away in, I believe it was 2014. And Crystal's friend Carla Allen, she passed away in 1995.
Wow.
So just a few years after Crystal's murder. I'm not sure of the details, but that's really sad. But people, family members, people who knew Bonnie said, she was never the same after this, and that she basically spent the rest of her life just grieving the loss of her daughter.
Yeah, ripped her heart out.
So sad.
Yeah, and I'm sure this community to this day remembers when this happened.
My main resource for today's case was a book by Dale Hudson and Billy Hills called An Hour to Kill. There were also news articles from the Sun News, and I watched a Forensic Files episode called The Alibi, the Crystal Todd Case.
Well, it's just senseless. It's like all the other stories we do, or so many times we've done. Just a senseless, violent, brutal murder. And
Crystal, she's such a cute girl. She sounds like she was a lovely young woman. She really wanted to help people. She was a good friend. And there's no telling, what she would have done with her life. And
that's the way it goes.
So it's really a sad case, and I feel for this mother because she, lost her best friend. And this murder it seems like it really impacted that community.
Well, yeah, it's horrible. It was grisly in its details, and just makes you want, it makes you scared that it can happen to anybody.
Well, and the fact this guy had been their friend. He had been in their home. He was like one of her best friends. He had spent time with her family. They grew up together.
I think that's almost worse in ways than some stranger doing it.
And how, he's agrees to be a pallbearer at her funeral. He's going to her mama's house every day, knowing what he did.
Yeah, her mom devastated, trying to make it through this really, trying to process this news and stuff, knowing the whole time that you did it.
Yeah,
It's
this was a boy
disgusting.
who had been welcomed to their dinner table, had, been part of the family, had spent, come over on holidays. You just never know people.
That would
That's
make
why
me.
I said with this murder, you just never really know somebody.
That would really make me want to kill you, to know that you've been welcomed in my home, sat at our table, knew the family.
Yeah, because I don't know, maybe this is silly, but for me, just breaking bread with somebody, inviting somebody into your home and having dinner with them, welcoming someone into your home and then having them sit at your dinner table and eat with you and your family. For me, that's you got to be I got to be close with you to do that.
That's intimate.
That's very intimate, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you could go over somebody's house and sit across the table from them knowing what you did.
Well, I mean, I think that feeling maybe comes from, evolution, just having, with limited resources and things. If you share your stuff, your food is so important to life with someone, it's kind of a big deal,
Yeah. And maybe even from like a biblical standpoint. I mean,
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. All right, Dylan, let's wrap it up. It's been nice talking to you today.
Well, thank you for this story. It was very sad.
It's very sad.
But that's what we
I think
do.
it's a great case to discuss just because of the sheer deception involved. Again, like you just never really know somebody. You think this young man is your friend and he's in your home and then he does something like this, And also I think it's just important to keep Crystal's name alive. We don't want to forget her. She's the victim in all of this, and I just wanted to kind of be able to talk about her as a person. She did seem like a really amazing young woman.
Yeah, she was, and such a shame.
And, her poor mother, she just went through so much.
All right, Heather, and yeah, well, Heather's going to get back in the Mountain Murders vault and start digging around again, rooting around in there.
What am I rooting around for?
Looking for some old truffles or something.
Oh.
Some murder truffles.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those sell for a lot.
Oh, well, Dylan, you mentioned before our website, so don't forget to check out mountainmurderspodcast.com. You can listen to the podcast directly from the website. We have merch. You can shop our merch store from the website.
You can do it all from the website.
All from the website, Dylan. The website.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Too cool.
All right. So until next time,
stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay safe out there.
Happy, hungry, and fed too.
Oh, Dylan. Bye.
Bye.